Welcome to another episode of Conspiracy Tapes by Skoob, the podcast where we dive deep into the strangest phenomena in entertainment. I'm your host, Ryan Martin, and today we're exploring one of the most mind-bending topics in modern television: The Simpsons' uncanny ability to predict the future. For over 3 decades, this yellow-skinned family from Springfield has been making us laugh with their satirical take on American life. But somewhere along the way, something extraordinary started happening. Episodes that seemed like harmless comedy began coming true years, sometimes decades later. From presidential elections to sporting events, from entertainment catastrophes to global pandemics, The Simpsons appears to have a crystal ball hidden somewhere in Matt Groening's animation studio. But is this really prophecy at work? Or is there something more rational behind these seemingly supernatural predictions? Today, we'll dissect the most famous examples, separate fact from fiction, and explore some wild conspiracy theories that might just change how you watch your favorite animated family forever. Let's start with the big one: the prediction that put The Simpsons on the map as fortune tellers. March 2000, Season 11, episode titled Bart to the Future. Picture this: Bart Simpson is having his future revealed by a Native American at a casino, 30 years into the future. His sister Lisa has become the first straight female president of the United States, and she's dealing with some serious problems. In one pivotal scene, President Lisa Simpson tells her staff, "As you know, we have inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump." President Trump. In the year 2000, when this aired, the idea of Donald Trump as president wasn't just unlikely, it was basically a punchline. The man was known for real estate, casinos, and reality TV. Politics? Come on. Yet, 16 years later, in one of the most shocking election upsets in American history, Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton to become the 45th President of the United States. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. According to Dan Graney, the writer who penned that episode, this wasn't meant as a prediction at all. In fact, it was supposed to be a cautionary tale. Graney explained to The Hollywood Reporter that Trump as president represented America hitting rock bottom. It was meant to be the worst-case scenario for Lisa to inherit. The goal was to create the most dire circumstances possible for the character. But here's the thing that makes this prediction less mystical than it first appears. Trump wasn't exactly a political unknown. Even in 2000, he'd been flirting with presidential ambitions for years. Back in the late 1980s, during an interview with Oprah Winfrey, Trump had already hinted at running for president, even suggesting Oprah herself as a potential vice president. And get this, just 1 year before that Simpsons episode aired, in 1999, Trump actually sought the Reform Party's nomination for the 2000 presidential election. He even published a book called The America We Deserve, laying out his policy proposals. So, while the prediction seems supernatural, the writers were actually picking up on real political signals that most people ignored. Showrunner Al Jean admitted they were simply looking for a funny celebrity to portray as president. The darkness and controversy that would later surround Trump's actual presidency wasn't part of their calculation. They wrote him as a more likable, exaggerated character. Still, you have to admit, getting it right 16 years in advance is pretty remarkable, even if it wasn't pure clairvoyance. From politics to fantasy, let's talk about one of television's most controversial endings and how The Simpsons saw it coming 2 years early. May 2019. Game of Thrones fans around the world watched in shock as Daenerys Targaryen, the mother of dragons, the supposed hero of the series, made a devastating choice. Riding her dragon above King's Landing, she ignored the bells of surrender and decided to burn the entire city to ash. It was a plot twist that divided the fan base and sparked endless debate about character development and storytelling. But here's the kicker. The Simpsons had already shown us this exact scene in 2017. The episode was called The Simpsons, part of season 29. It was a fantasy parody where Springfield gets transformed into a medieval world filled with wizards, witches, dragons, and magical creatures. The Simpson family embarks on a quest to cure Marge's mother, who's slowly transforming into an ice walker. Sound familiar? But the episode's climax is what really matters here. The family witnesses a dragon completely destroying a village with its fiery breath. Not just any destruction, the angle, the color palette, the positioning of the dragon, everything matches almost perfectly with what we'd see 2 years later when Daenerys torched King's Landing. The episode was loaded with Game of Thrones references, three-eyed crows, ice walkers, and they even had Nikolai Coster-Waldau, who played Jaime Lannister, guest starring as Marge's incestuous brother. Now, skeptics might say that dragons burning cities isn't exactly a unique concept in fantasy. They'd point to examples like The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies, or countless other fantasy stories. But the specific visual similarities between the Simpsons scene and the actual Game of Thrones episode are striking. It's almost like the animators had a storyboard from HBO's production. When the Game of Thrones episode aired, social media exploded with side-by-side comparisons. Fans couldn't believe how precise the match was. This wasn't just a general concept. This was a shot-for-shot prediction of one of television's most controversial moments. The episode even began with Homer saying, "As night descends, my Duff Watch begins," a clear play on the Night's Watch motto from Game of Thrones. The writers weren't even trying to hide their inspiration source. But if you really want to see The Simpsons' prophetic powers in action, forget about politics and fantasy drama. Let's talk about sports, specifically the most prestigious game in American football. The Super Bowl isn't just a game, it's a cultural phenomenon. It's the second biggest day for food consumption in America after Thanksgiving, and billions of dollars are wagered on the outcome every year. And somehow, The Simpsons managed to predict not one, not two, but 3 consecutive Super Bowl winners with perfect accuracy. It all started with Season 3, Episode 12, Lisa the Greek, which originally aired in 1992. In this episode, Lisa Simpson discovers she has an unusual talent for predicting football results. Homer, being Homer, decides to exploit his daughter's gift for betting purposes. When Lisa finds out about her father's scheme, she gets upset and decides to make one final, emotionally charged prediction. She tells Homer that if she still loves him, Washington will win the Super Bowl. If she doesn't love him anymore, Buffalo will win instead. Here's where it gets incredible. This episode aired just 2 days before Super Bowl 26, which featured the Buffalo Bills versus the Washington Redskins. As viewers watched the episode, they saw Buffalo take an early lead, just like in real life. But then Washington came back to win, confirming that Lisa's love for her father was intact. The final score? 37-24, exactly matching reality. But the story doesn't end there. The producers of The Simpsons realized they had struck gold, so the following year they re-aired the same episode with new dubbed lines. This time, Lisa predicted the Dallas Cowboys would win, and sure enough, the Cowboys demolished the Bills 52-17 in Super Bowl 27. Still not convinced this was more than coincidence, they did it again in 1994. Same episode, another redub, another Cowboys prediction, and once again, Dallas won, defeating Buffalo in Super Bowl 28. Think about this for a moment. The Simpsons took a single episode and edited it 3 different times, each time correctly predicting the Super Bowl winner. The odds of getting 3 consecutive Super Bowl predictions right by pure chance are roughly 1 in 8. Not impossible, but certainly impressive. What makes this even more remarkable is that the Bills were heavily favored in their first matchup against Washington, yet the Simpsons correctly called the upset, and the Cowboys' back-to-back victories, while more predictable, still required the writers to bet on specific outcomes in advance. This wasn't just entertainment. This was the kind of accuracy that professional sports analysts would kill for. The episode became legendary among both Simpsons fans and sports bettors, with some people genuinely considering checking future Simpsons episodes before placing their Super Bowl wagers. Now, not every supposed Simpsons prediction holds up under scrutiny, and it's important to separate the wheat from the chaff. Let's talk about one of the most controversial and misinterpreted examples, the claim that The Simpsons predicted the coronavirus pandemic. The episode in question is Marge in Chains from Season 4, which aired in 1993. The storyline involves an outbreak of a virus, and some people on the internet decided this was proof that The Simpsons had predicted COVID-19 nearly 30 years in advance. But here's where we need to pump the brakes and look at the facts. First, the virus in The Simpsons isn't coronavirus. It's something called the Osaka flu. Second, the factory workers shown coughing into boxes are depicted as Japanese, not Chinese, contrary to what some viral social media posts claimed. Third, and most importantly, the Osaka flu in the episode doesn't kill anyone. Dr. Hibbert dismisses the townspeople's concerns, saying the only treatment is bed rest and that any other supposed remedies would just be placebos. Bill Oakley, a former writer and showrunner for The Simpsons, was absolutely furious about this misinterpretation. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he called it distasteful and condemned how the episode was being twisted to serve harmful agendas. Oakley was particularly appalled that some people were using the show's satirical depiction to spread ideas about an Asian conspiracy regarding coronavirus. He made it crystal clear that the Osaka flu storyline was never meant to stoke fear or carry racial connotations. It was simply meant to be absurd, cartoonish humor, the kind The Simpsons is famous for. Oakley expressed deep frustration with the rise of anti-Asian sentiment during the early pandemic, especially when then-President Trump repeatedly referred to COVID-19 as the Chinese virus. The idea that their comedy script could be manipulated to align with divisive political rhetoric horrified him. However, there was one aspect of the episode that did eerily mirror real-life pandemic responses: the portrayal of political leadership during a crisis. In Marge in Chains, Mayor Quimby reassures Springfield citizens via broadcast, promising not to abandon the city during the outbreak. But the scene quickly reveals that the mayor is actually on a beach vacation, satirically highlighting the contradictory and self-serving behavior of politicians. This aspect of the episode did seem to echo the mixed messages and hypocrisies that emerged during the COVID-19 pandemic, when some political leaders failed to lead by example. It was a perfect example of how The Simpsons uses satire to reflect real-world absurdities, even if unintentionally. The key lesson here is context. The Simpsons has been making satirical commentary on society for over 30 years. With hundreds of episodes tackling every conceivable topic, some coincidental overlap with real events is statistically inevitable. But when people cherry-pick elements from episodes and twist them to fit current narratives, especially on sensitive issues like public health and race, they're missing the point entirely. And now we come to the most outlandish explanation for The Simpsons' predictive abilities: the conspiracy theory that Matt Groening and his team are members of a secret society that orchestrates global events. This theory gained traction partly because of a Season 6 episode called Homer the Great, where Homer joins an exclusive Springfield organization called the Stonecutters. Through an Emmy-nominated song, we learn that this secret society is involved in various conspiracies, including hiding the existence of Martians and suppressing the metric system in America. It's classic Simpsons satire, but conspiracy theorists saw something more sinister. Online forums are filled with claims that Matt Groening is a high-ranking Freemason or member of the Illuminati. David Silverman, a longtime director of The Simpsons, has even jokingly confessed in interviews that the show can predict the future because they're part of the Illuminati. Some conspiracy theorists have even analyzed photographs of Groening adjusting his glasses, claiming that the way his fingers circle his eye proves he's a Freemason. But here's a reality check from someone who actually knows Freemasons. They're not the shadowy puppet masters controlling world events that conspiracy theorists imagine. The author of our source material mentions that their best friend was invited to a Freemasons initiation ball, and it was basically an excuse for members to gather, drink, play games, and potentially help each other with financial troubles. No grand global plots, no alien cover-ups, pretty much exactly how The Simpsons portrays them. This ties into a psychological concept called predictive programming, coined by researcher Alan Watt. The theory suggests that authoritative organizations use pop culture, movies, TV shows, comics, books, to subtly influence public opinion and desensitize us to future planned events. According to this theory, entertainment media are the most accessible pathways into our homes and minds. Some believers claim that The Simpsons isn't predicting the future, but warning us about it, that the show's staff have been subtly hinting at upcoming events throughout the series. They suggest the stonecutters were created to hint at the reality of secret societies controlling world events. But this theory requires us to believe that a secret organization powerful enough to orchestrate global events would simultaneously be careless enough to broadcast their plans through a mainstream animated sitcom. It's a logical contradiction that conspiracy theorists rarely address. The more rational explanation is that The Simpsons has been producing satirical content about American society for over 3 decades. With more than 700 episodes tackling every conceivable aspect of modern life, some predictions are bound to come true by sheer statistical probability. When you throw enough darts at a board, eventually you'll hit the bullseye. So, what's the real secret behind The Simpsons' eerie predictions? It isn't prophecy. It's brilliant satire. For more than 30 years, the writers have studied society so sharply that their exaggerations often land frighteningly close to reality. From Trump's rise to uncanny parodies of pop culture, their so-called predictions are less mystic visions and more the product of razor-sharp observation. But here's the intrigue. If The Simpsons can see cultural shifts coming decades before the rest of us, what does that say about the patterns shaping our future right now? What currents are we missing that they've already spotted? To dive deeper into the real stories behind these predictions, download the Skoob app now and unlock the full exploration. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sometimes the sharpest mirror of reality comes not from prophets, but from a yellow family in Springfield.